This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Super Mario Bros. Wonder introduces badges that drastically enhance how you play the game, so I'll be ranking them. This is based on how useful they are in any given circumstance. So with that, let's get her ranked. 24. Invisibility. This is an expert badge that purposefully wants to make your life harder. You're completely invisible, and you can only tell where you are based on the cloud scuttles when you're running around. This makes the entire game harder, which means this obviously has to be the worst badge. It is fun for more devoted players to try to clear levels in this absurd manner, but objectively speaking, it's more of an anti-badge than anything. 23. Sound Off. The final badge you unlock in the game changes some of the sound effects, and the sound effects are human voices, which is very goofy and simultaneously a slap in the face. You have to basically 100% the game for this badge, and all you get for your hard work is a gag. It's an amusing joke, but also a complete joke. 22. Coin Reward. If you really want more coins, then this is the badge for you. All that changes is that defeating enemies gives you more coins, and that's really about it. You might think that could be useful because purple coins are fairly scarce, but enemies don't spawn purple coins, so you'll only ever get extra yellow coins. And those are only useful for getting more 1-ups, but even that is completely pointless considering you can buy them at shops for relatively cheap. If you really like coins, then I guess it's kind of neat, but it's not that useful. 21. Coin Magnet. Instead of getting more coins from enemies, you pull in coins that are near you. The only reason I'd count this as slightly better is because purple coins are taken into the equation. If you're having trouble getting coins in big clumps, this should help a little bit. Although even still, it doesn't really offer much to your actual move pool. 20. Jet Run. Basically, you go fast as shit. It's honestly a bit too fast. This badge is labeled as an expert one for a reason. On top of dashing across levels, you can also mid-air jump if you run off an edge, but the window to make that jump is fairly small. So while it's cool to have a mid-air jump, it doesn't really help all that much. This badge can be incredibly fun to use when the level is built around it. There's a tiny handful of those in the game, and it's great in that regard, but for almost every other level, the jet run is a massive nuisance. Even on the easier levels, where everything is relatively flat, it's easy to die by just running into enemies. I think speedrunners are going to get a lot of use out of jet run, but for me, it's not a badge that I'd want to use most of the time. 19. Auto Super Mushroom. You'll start the level off with a Super Mushroom power-up. The amount of times this is useful is extremely small. It really only helps if you're stuck on a hard level. And Mario Bros. Wonder has very few hard levels, so you won't find much of a reason to use this. I'd still say it's better than the coin badges just because it did help a few times compared to never, but that's not saying much. If you already have another power-up, you don't even get a free mushroom in your inventory, deeming this even more useless. 18. All Firepower. These are the most disappointing badges in the game. All that changes is that you get access to the Fire Flower with any power-up. So if you're really eager to use the Fire Flower, then by all means, go crazy with this one. It feels like a big waste though, because the levels are already built around the power-up that goes best with it. So I don't really understand the point of this. 17. All Drill Power. It's the exact same thing as All Firepower, but this time it's with the drill. The only reason it's higher is because the ability is a little more useful. Your hat can protect you from some attacks, you can dig into the ground and ceiling, and even attack from there. 16. All Bubble Power. Take a wild guess how this badge works. It's only higher than Drill and Fire because the bubble power-up is pretty darn good. Also, since the power-up normally shows up as a bubble, the item actually isn't changed visually when using it. So it'll look like you're collecting a Fire Flower or Elephant Suit, and you still get the bubble, and this applies with the drill too. As for what this power-up does, you can use the bubbles to turn most enemies into bubbles, and you can even jump off of them. This can be really helpful if you're trying to reach a high area and just need one extra jump. 15. All Elephant Power. It works exactly how you'd expect, and I find the Elephant power-up to be the best out of all the ones in the game. First off, it's funny to look at, but second, you can attack with your trunk, hold water to grow certain flowers and tulips, and even ground pound through heavy blocks. You're also able to push things a lot faster, so it's a really great power-up in general. 14. Safety Bounce. Did you miss Peachette from New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe? Well, that's pretty much all this badge is. If you're about to fall into a pit, the game saves you and sends you into the air. This can be fairly useful if you're falling into pits a lot, I guess, but there's also a lot of badges that you could use instead that makes avoiding pits really easy. This is a cool badge to have, but it's another one that I don't really find that helpful unless you're a beginner player that's really struggling for some reason. 13. Spring Feet. Become the ultimate jump man. You'll be forced to jump constantly, and by holding the jump button, you can get a higher jump. This badge is a cool idea, and sometimes it can change how you play the levels. If there's an area in the level where you're supposed to stand in place to get somewhere, well, you can't really do that with the Spring Feet. It is a little harder to control yourself when you're constantly jumping too, but you also have your spin, so it's not that much of a hindrance. 12. Sensor. I'm really conflicted on where to put this badge. If it wasn't for the sensor, I wouldn't have been able to track down some of the 10 flower coins. A handful of them are in really tough spots, and this badge indicates when you're close to one or a wonder flower. So on your first go, this badge is fantastic. But once you beat the game, or replay it as most people do with Mario games, it loses most of its value. Maybe it deserves to be higher, but most people will have no use for this unless you're going for 100%. 11. Rhythm Jump. This is a really strange badge. You earn coins by jumping to the beat of the song. There's already a few levels that are built around this mechanic, and they're incredibly enjoyable to play. And surprisingly, it's a fun challenge trying to maintain your jumps with the song as you're playing along. You do need to time your jumps well here, and it can be hard to avoid enemies if you have to wait to jump at a certain time. If you jump at the wrong times, you'll lose your beat and have to restart until you get 4 good jumps in a row. There's a fun charm to this badge that I can't quite put my finger on, but in all honesty, it's really not that useful. It's one of those things where it's fun to mess around with for a bit. I mean, it's a great novelty, I'm glad it's included, but it's not a badge that I deem to be that helpful. 10. Dolphin Kick. It sure does offer a kick, alright. When in the water, you can shoot yourself forward and get a massive burst of speed. It feels good to do, especially in succession, but I don't know how useful I'd really call it. For starters, this badge can only be used in the water, and there's only so many water levels. It is great for getting through the water fast, but there's really not that many in the game. The challenges around this badge are super fun, but those are incredibly specific to Dolphin Kick. Another thing that's annoying is there's no way to stop your momentum once you charge forward. Now, duh, that makes sense because you're in the water, but it can make navigation a little clunky at times. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I kinda prefer Penguin Mario from the new Super Mario Bros. Games because it offers the same smooth controls that the Dolphin Kick does, but with a greater degree of control. So this might be an unpopular opinion, but I really don't have much desire to use this unless I'm struggling in the water for whatever reason. 9. Parachute Cap. This one somehow inflates your hat and allows you to float slowly to the ground. It even works with the princesses and toads. They just kinda bust hats out of nowhere. Floating can be useful for helping correct jumps that are too short, and obviously for falling slower. You can even hold items while using the cap, which is really cool, and also makes no sense at all. The item just floats on your chest and defies all gravity. So while it is great for helping reach the top of flagpoles, it's a very circumstantial item. When I first got it, I enjoyed it quite a bit, but the majority of the levels don't have crazy jumps that are going to require this item. It can be useful in a pinch, but there's definitely better options out there. 8. Add exclamation blocks. I was really confused how this badge worked at first, but the main premise is that extra exclamation blocks are added in all the courses. These blocks can hold coins, items, or even just additional platforms. In some levels, it adds small new sections you normally can't access, and even makes some areas easier to play. This makes this a surprisingly interesting badge because it can totally change how you play the stage because of the layout. A lot of times, it makes the stage easier, for better or worse. I find Mario Bros. Wonder to be pretty easy already, but since it changes the experience of the level, it's a pretty neat badge in that regard. 7. Wall Climb Jump. We're going full-on Mega Man X with this one. Well, kind of. This badge lets you perform a wall climbing jump, and then you'll switch to a normal jump afterwards. So you can't spam wall climbing like you can in Mega Man X, but this game isn't really built for that to be necessary. This is a really satisfying badge to use. Getting just a little extra burst of height feels great, and it can come in handy. Sometimes you'll need to make jumps that require more height than usual, and if a wall is nearby, you can just wall climb your way up. Like most badges, these moments can vary a lot in actual usage, and you probably won't find yourself using this one as often as you'd think. I found that a lot of times, I just wanted to do a normal wall jump that curves right away, but instead, I'd be forced to do the vertical jump instead. So for sheer style points, this one is still fun, but it's not super useful in that many scenarios. If there are more vertical-based levels, then I could see this being placed higher, but most of them are fairly flat. 6. Grappling Vine. By far the most unique badge in the entire game. When you're in the air, you'll launch a vine out of your hands and grab onto the wall, so you basically become Spider-Man in a sense. What's also nice is you'll cling into place for a few seconds, and then once you lose your grip, you'll start sliding down the wall. Even if this happens, you can just keep spamming the vine over and over again, so in a way this is very similar to the wall climb, but with unlimited jumps. It does have its drawbacks though, the biggest one being that you can only aim left and right. It would have been really nice to be able to fire the vine in any direction, but maybe that would have broken the game too much. It also feels like the vine should be able to attack enemies or objects, but instead it just goes through them. I know that's not its purpose, but it would have been awesome if it doubled as an attack as well. This is a fun badge, but because the levels are so flat, there's usually not too many walls to climb up to make this super useful. 5. Fast Dash. The name says it all. You f***ing cook with this thing. Not as fast as Jet Run, but it's a lot more controllable. If speed is your game, then the Fast Dash is for you, as you'll run and even walk faster. The description says that you'll run slightly faster than usual, but they're kind of lying. You go at least twice as fast, and you can still stop yourself easily. There's something inherently fun about speeding through a level, and Fast Dash fills those shoes well without being obnoxious. It's a pretty basic concept, but Mario generally isn't that fast-paced of a game, so it's pretty thrilling to be able to blaze through levels quickly. 4. Timed High Jump. Okay, this is a weird one. A common move that isn't in Mario Bros. Wonder is the triple jump, which might seem really bizarre to not include. However, that's because it's, somewhat turned into this badge. Basically, if you time your jump so that you jump as you're hitting the ground, the second jump will be higher. And it even works in the sand, which is a nice feature. So what we have here isn't triple jumping, but slightly better double jumping. In fact, it's a lot better, because you can perform this double jump on the spot without being forced to build speed. So in a twist, it functions exactly the same as double jumps do in Mario 64. And you do get a little extra height on the double jumps too. It's not as much height as say the floating high jump or crouching high jump, but it's still enough of a difference that it can be useful at times. The only issue with this badge is that it's maybe too similar to the regular moveset, and only offers a slight tweak. 3. Crouching High Jump. The same jump from Super Mario Bros. 2 makes its grand return as a badge. Crouch for a second or two, and then fling yourself into the air. This jump gets some serious height. It's a lot higher than you'd expect it to be. And because of that, it's a pretty darn great badge. Its biggest downside, of course, is the fact that you have to come to a stop to perform the jump, which is going to be a big problem in the harder levels. If you aren't doing an auto-scroller and just trying to get to higher areas easier, then the badge will come into use pretty often. Something that I also tested here was if you could reach the top of the flagpole, and sadly, it's not possible. It's just barely out of reach, and I imagine Nintendo did this intentionally. If the jump reached the top, it would make this maybe too easy for levels that are hard to reach. It's still a fantastic badge though, if you don't mind coming to a stop to blast off. 2. Floating High Jump. If you're a big fan of Luigi physics, then you'll be a big fan of this badge. You'll jump a lot higher than normal and also float for a moment. So in a way, this kind of combines the abilities of the parachute cap, but obviously not to the same degree. But because it has a touch of floatiness, it adds a lot of value. And that's not all. One of the most annoying aspects about Luigi in the older games is the change in momentum. He usually starts his run really slowly and slides around like he's on ice. With this badge, however, that's not a problem at all. Now, I may have noticed a tiny bit more start lag, but that hardly matters because you can stop on a dime. It makes so many jumps so much easier, while still feeling safe to pull off. And it's just really satisfying on top of all that. 1. Boosting Spin Jump. The minute I put this badge on, I fell in love. Boosting Spin Jump is sick, and it does one thing. All you get is a midair jump that spins. Now, I know that sounds incredibly basic, but it's by far the most useful badge in the entire game. Some may argue otherwise, but as soon as I got this badge, I felt no need to use the other ones for the rest of my time playing. It allows you to get some extra height, while also easily correcting any errors you made in your initial jump. Want to go for a risky coin hiding in a pit? Well, now you can because of the extra jump. Oh, did you forget to jump and you're diving straight towards lava? Save yourself with the mid jump without thinking about it. No other badge is like this in the game, outside of the safety bounce and jet run, but those really aren't the same thing. Now, you've probably already compared this to the propeller mushroom from New Super Mario Bros., and it is kind of similar in a sense. Even though the propeller mushroom gives you way more height, it also made horizontal movement slow and put you to a crawl, whereas with this badge, you just keep trucking along at the speed you already had. Boosting Spin Jump is peak, and you can't tell me otherwise. Add Squarespace. And also, a big thank you to Squarespace, today's sponsor. They're the best and most powerful place to create the slickest websites. New to Squarespace is the Fluid Engine, a next-generation website design system that makes it even easier to make a website. There's also Squarespace extensions that connect your store to vetted third-party tools to extend functionality, and the analytics page makes it easy to see who's visiting your site and where people are coming from. Last year, I put together a website for my YouTube series Bandy's Universe, and I'm still keeping it up to date because of how easy it is to manage and organize the content. So with that, go to squarespace.com/Nathaniel to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. The link is in the description. There's quite a few badges in Mario Bros. Wonder, and it's got me wondering what new badges could show up in future Mario titles. But with that, thanks for watching.